So let's all just take a breath together. Welcome to June. I heard someone say on TV the other day, welcome to Blur's Day. It feels like that, doesn't it? Every day is Blur's Day. And so here we are in June already. And so I welcome you to June. And as you know, our theme for the year continues. Life is for living, just say yes. Life is for living, just say yes. And our theme for the month of June is the gift of change. The gift of change. Let's take a breath on that, because we don't always see change as a gift, and yet we know that it is the gift of change. And as I prepared was preparing the themes for the months and the topics, I wasn't quite sure what they meant at the time when I wrote them down. And the topic for today is crossing the bridge. Crossing the bridge. And when I wrote it, it was like, wonder what that means. And as I looked at it last week, crossing the bridge, I wondered what does that mean? And as things progressed through the week, so many things are going on now. So many things are happening so fast. So much is going on around us, and there's so much. Well, last week there was so much anger. This week there wasn't all that anger, and there seems to have been a shift, but there's still a lot going on, a lot of emotion, a lot of feelings, a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, a lot of all that. And I was just sort of observing all that as I was going through the weeks. And I was very busy this past week, and I still didn't know quite what crossing the bridge meant, but I thought I'd get to that eventually. And I was in a meeting on Thursday when the funeral for George Floyd was held. So I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I had the TV on in the other room. And I happened to get up and go into the living room when the TV was on, just as Reverend Al Sharpton asked people to stand for the 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And I stood. And I realized I've not seen the video of the murder of George Floyd. I could not watch that. That was too painful. So as many times as they've shown it on TV, I've never seen it because I've always looked away. And so in looking away and not feeling that pain, I also was avoiding feeling a lot of anything about it. I was just really more in my head than I even thought that I was. But at any rate, when I walked into that room and I stood there with my head bowed for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I could feel myself just cracking open. I could feel my heart cracking open. I could feel the feelings coming up. I could feel what 8 minutes and 46 seconds really felt like. I was in that moment for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And the emotions started to come, the tears started to well up, and the feelings started to come, and flashbacks started to happen, and memories started to flood in. And all of a sudden, I felt overwhelmed by it all. Yet I felt open to it all. I felt one with it all. I felt one with everything that was going on. And I became so aware of how I had blocked so much of the pain. I had blocked so much of my feelings regarding things that have happened in the past, things that I know about, things that I've experienced, but all of that just came to the forefront as I stood for those 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And I realized that a bridge is something that connects 2 points. It's usually we think of it as a structure that leads a path across water or across some kind of obstacle. But it really is a connector. It is a connector. It connects one point with another point. That 8 minutes and 46 seconds was a connector, was a bridge for me. It was a bridge from holding everything in to the awareness and the reality of what's happening in the world today, what's happening all around me, what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what we all are feeling, what we all are experiencing. And so I really began to realize what a bridge really is and what this talk really is about. And I'm giving you some history so that you understand the importance and the significance of crossing the bridge and the significance that I didn't even know until after that bridge moment that I had with those 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Because the rest of the week, every time I looked at the topic, crossing the bridge, what was on my mind was the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. The Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. I was born in Selma, Alabama. I didn't grow up there, but I was born there. My grandparents lived there. My mother was born there. My mother was raised there. But the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, that's the way you get out of Selma to Montgomery. And when I started to think about the Edmund Pettus Bridge, I started to think about that march from Selma to Montgomery. And I started to think about March 7th, 1965, Bloody Sunday, when Congressman John Lewis and Hosea Williams led the march from Selma to Montgomery. And when they got to the bridge, to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were turned back by violence from the state troopers, from the local police. They were beaten, they were injured. John Lewis's skull was fractured. My mother's sister was on that bridge. She was in that march. She was in that march. She was on that bridge that Sunday. She was one of those protesters who was beat back. And they retreated and they went to Brown Chapel Church, which was my grandmother's church, where my mother grew up, in that church. And they went back to Brown Chapel Church and they tried to get themselves together and decided that they would try again in a few days. And when they tried it again in a few days, by that time the governor had gotten a federal court order to prevent them from marching. So they had to turn back a second time. And finally, a few days later, Martin Luther King had come into Selma to march with them, and the court order had been rescinded, and they were able to make that march across Edmund Pettus Bridge, and then the 54-mile march to Montgomery, Alabama. Let's take a breath together. The point that I'm making is that there are so many bridges. There's so many bridges that connect us. As I said, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds was the bridge that connected me to the past, that connected me to who I am, that connected me to my feelings, that connected me to this talk, that connected me to this topic of crossing the bridge. You know, in order to have change, we have to be willing to and be able to cross the bridge to get to change. Staying in Selma, everything was going to stay the same. People could not vote. Black people could not vote in Selma, in many places in Alabama, but particularly in Selma, and they were trying to register to vote, and they couldn't, so they were going to have this march to Montgomery to bring attention to the Voting Rights Act. I'm not talking very well, to the Voting Rights Act, and that still had not been passed, but that the legislation that was there in Congress. But they had to get across that bridge first. They had to be willing to cross that bridge first. And despite the pain, despite the danger, despite the risk, they had to be willing to cross that bridge, because that's where change is, when we cross that bridge. When we're willing to cross the bridge from where we are to where we want to be. When we're willing to cross the bridge from what's been happening all along to what we'd like to see happen. And so they were willing to risk their lives to cross that bridge to get to Montgomery, Alabama. And after they did, then the Voting Rights Act of 1965 passed. And so when I look at that, when I think about that, I just look at what's happening today. What's happening today is not dissimilar to what was happening then. There were a lot of people who came to march. There were a lot of people who marched the entire trip. There was a lot of danger. There were some people who were killed on that trip to Montgomery. There were more people who met them in Montgomery. I think they ended up with about 8,000 people who were there, or maybe more, who were there in Montgomery by the time they got there to do the march, to end the march there in Montgomery. But the whole thing crossing that bridge resulted in the change of voting rights in Alabama. My grandmother cast her first vote after she was 70 years old. And those people crossed that bridge so that she could do that. They crossed that bridge so that change could happen. And what I want us to understand is that not only did they cross that bridge, they were the bridge. You know, we have to be willing to cross a bridge, but we have to be a bridge before we can cross it sometimes. We have to be a bridge because the bridge is in consciousness. The bridge is in consciousness, in our consciousness, our willingness to be that bridge between hate and love, to be that bridge between fear and love, to be that bridge between doubt and faith, to be that bridge. We have to be willing. We have to be willing to be the bridge. And when we can be the bridge, as within, so without, when we can be willing to be the bridge, then we can cross the bridge and we can bring others with us. We can bring others with us. So let's take a breath together. The gift of change. Crossing the bridge changes everything because it changes us and it changes our location. It changes where we are to where we want to be. To where we want to be. You know what has been a bridge for us also during this time? COVID-19. COVID-19 has been a bridge. Who would have ever thought that a pandemic would be a bridge that we had to cross? That would be a bridge that would allow us to get from one place to the other. Because, COVID-19 brought this whole globe together. It brought us all together. It made us all stay home. It made us all stop being busy. It made us all stop running into our own individual lives and doing all kinds of things that can distract us. And it made us all be still for a moment. And, being still for that moment, being home for that moment, there were so many people who got to see the murder of George Floyd. Do you know that wasn't an unusual thing that happened? The unusual thing is that so many people got to see it. So many people all over the globe got to see it because everything had come to a stop. Everything had come to a halt. Everything had required us to be still. And once we were still, once we were not jumping from one place to the other, flitting from one place to the other, then we came to a place of stillness and our awareness was heightened. So we were in a period of heightened awareness. COVID brought us to that period of heightened awareness. So that everybody, many people, as I said, all over the globe, got a chance to see exactly what happened. Got a chance to see what I know happens all the time. Got a chance to see what many of us know happens all the time. That was not unusual. The way that it happened on camera was unusual. But the unusual thing was the fact that, as I said, so many people got a chance to see it. So many people got a chance to observe it. So many people got a chance to wake up and say, oh my God, how could this be? And so there's so many who are awake today. There are so many now who are out marching, who are out protesting, who are out saying enough is enough. There's so many now who are willing to be that bridge, who are willing to be that bridge and then cross that bridge. Cross that bridge. That's on both sides. That's on the side of the protesters and the side of the police force. We see more and more that people have started to move from anger and separation more and more to oneness and togetherness and love and community and recognizing humanity. Yes, there have been some incidents of violence still this week, but nothing like last week, nothing like the looting and the burning and the anger that was showing up last week. There's been a shift, if you notice. There's been a shift. There's been a shift all around. And people are beginning to respond differently. People are beginning to see things differently. It's like a veil has been removed from the eyes of the world. And all of a sudden, we're beginning to see rightly. We're beginning to see what's happening. We're beginning to see what's been happening for the last 401 years. In this country, we're beginning to see so much that we could not have seen before. But it's all because we've been willing to cross that bridge. And as I said, many people who are out there marching are willing to be the bridge, because there are so many who have said, I've heard so many people say that they're willing to risk illness from COVID-19 to do what they're doing right now, to be out there in those crowds, to be out there marching, to be out there protesting, to be out there yelling, to do all those things that we're not supposed to do during this time. They're willing to take that risk. It's just that important to them at this time. It's just that important to all of us. It has to become important to all of us. When we talk about oneness, when we talk about about all of us being made in the image and likeness and out of God itself. When we talk about there being only one life, only one power, only one presence, only one mind, only one breath, and that is God, that is the life of each and every one of us, then there has got to be a time when we start to live that. And I asked the question last week, what is it going to take for us to come to realize that there's only one? What is it going to take for us to come to live in oneness and know that we have to live in oneness? Oh, we die in separation. All of us. What happens to one of us happens to all of us. Believe it or not, it happens to all of us. And so the question I did not expect to be answered as quickly as it was. I didn't expect it to be answered so soon, but the answer is coming. And we have to continue to wake up to it. We have to continue in our awareness. We can't let this be a one-shot deal. We can't let this be. I've seen these marches before. I've seen all this stuff that we're doing now. I've heard the chants. I've heard the songs, and we've done all this before. What's it going to take for us to change? And let this change be lasting, and let us continue to move forward. Because, there are forces that are continually trying to pull us back. There are forces that are fighting for the status quo. There are forces that are fighting for the status quo, and we have to be willing to continue to be the truth that we know. We have to continue to be the truth of oneness. We have to continue to show up in our own lives in the truth that we know and as the truth that we know, that we are all a part of the one. We are each and we are all a part of the one. Yes, we are all different. No, we are not all the same. Yes, we are all one. No, we're not all the same. Thank God for that. But what we have to do is come together in our difference, come together in our diversity, come together in our different colors, our different races, our different ages, our different genders. We have to come together as one. But we have to, that's what being a bridge is all about. It's when we recognize that we are the bridge between separation and oneness. We are the bridge between separation and oneness. And when we recognize that, then we start to cross the bridges that are required for us to cross in order to live in oneness. But we have to be it in consciousness first. And so there are a couple of things I'm going to invite you to do today. Let's take a breath first of all. A couple of things I'm going to invite you to do today is stay awake. Stay awake. It's like a global alarm clock went off. A global alarm clock went off when George Floyd was murdered. Everybody woke up. Don't hit the snooze button. Don't hit the snooze button next week, next month. Things are opening up now. The more and more people are able to go out. People are going back to work. Sports events are going to start happening. The bars are opening. The restaurants are opening. Schools are going to be open eventually. So many things are beginning to happen now that we can get distracted. Don't get distracted. Don't get distracted. Stay awake. Stay awake. That alarm clock that woke us up was pretty heavy duty. COVID started waking us up. That alarm clock was pretty heavy duty. We don't want one heavier or louder than this one that we have right here and right now. Because we still have the opportunity to make some changes. We still have the opportunity to walk in oneness. We still have to have the opportunity to practice what we know. We still have the opportunity to come together in oneness and in the knowing that God is all there is. In the knowing that God is all there is. So I'm inviting you to stay awake. To stay awake. To stay awake. And then be the bridge. Set your intention to be a bridge. Be a bridge from separation to oneness. Be a bridge from hate to love. Be a bridge from ignorance to enlightenment. Be a bridge. Be a bridge. And what that means for you, it's not going to be the same thing it means for me. Be a bridge. Be willing to have conversations. Be willing to speak up, to speak out when you see injustice. Be willing to see what it is you can do, how it is you can be different. That's on each one of us. It has to start, as the song says, it has to start with each one of us individually. So be willing to be that bridge. Marianne Williamson says that a crisis will make us go deep to discover who it is we are. it forces us to go deep, to discover who it is we really are, and what it is we really believe, and what we really love. We are a country, a world in crisis right now. There's a crisis all around us. It's forcing us to go deep. It's forcing us to look at what we believe. It's forcing us to look at what we have believed in the past and how many of those beliefs we still hold on to. It's forcing us to change. It's forcing us to change. It's forcing us to change. And if you're one of those who is ready to dig your heels in and stay the same way that things have always been, bless you. Bless you. God bless you. It's time to move forward. It's time to continue with this change. It's time to cross that bridge. So being a bridge, as I said, means to make whatever changes there need to be made in your own individual lives. Engage in those difficult conversations. You know, one of the most difficult conversations in this country to have is about race. That's the number one conversation, that national conversation that we need to have. But the conversation has to start with us, within ourselves, and then with our families, and then with our friends, and then in our small communities. And we need to really have honest, uncomfortable conversations. And we have to come to the realization that we are not all the same, that my experience of this world is different than your experience of this world. Your experience of this world is different from the next person's experience of this world. That we all have our differences, and recognize the differences. Recognize that the way that I move through the world is not the way you move through the world. We have to come to recognize all of that. But we can only do that when we are in consciousness ready to be a bridge. Ready to be a bridge between that separation and that oneness. Ready to be a bridge, as I said, between ignorance and enlightenment. Ready to be a bridge, ready to learn. Ready to give up our old ideas about who we are and who the other person is and how the other person is and all that other stuff, and be willing to listen. Be willing to not only talk, not only speak up, but be willing to sit back and listen without being defensive, without being offended, without all that. And to recognize that when we have the right intention, when God is in the midst of it, when we recognize that we're doing this for the purpose of living in oneness, living in oneness with our Creator, living in oneness with each other, when we recognize that this is our reason for being, to express that power and that presence and that love and that light that is God. And each of us is doing it in our own unique way. And when we recognize this, then we recognize that everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's expressing God. And when when they don't even know it, when they don't even know who they are, then it's for us to hold the space for them to get there. It's for us to hold the space for us all to get there, so that we can all get to the same place, crossing that bridge. And when we're holding a space, we're being that bridge. That's what those two practitioners who are holding High Watch are doing today. They're being that bridge for us to walk through this service, for us to walk through this time. When we pray, we're being that bridge. And you know, a bridge, as I mentioned prayer, I'm thinking, you know, bridges have to be strengthened. They have to have support. They have to be anchored, so that when the weight gets on them, they don't cave in, they don't fall. When we are the bridge, our anchor is God. Our anchor is our spiritual practice. Our anchor is our awareness of the truth, that there's only one life, that there's only one presence, that there's only one mind, that there's only one, and that we are made in the image and likeness and out of that one, and we live and move and have our being in that one. That's what being a bridge is about. That's what being a bridge is about, and that's what I'm inviting you to do, stay awake and be a bridge. And then once you are in that consciousness of being the bridge, then be willing to cross the bridge to change. Be willing to cross the bridge. And you know, when we are in that place of being the bridge, we are able to be the bridge because of the vision we have. Because of the vision we have of what the future looks like, because of the vision we have of what oneness looks like, of what living in oneness is like. And you know, I was talking last week about pain pushing until vision pulls. if we allow our vision to pull us, well, if our purpose is to have change in this country, to have change in this world, to have change so that we are all treated equally, to have change so that we are all, the humanity of everyone is recognized, not just a few, but of all of us. The humanity is recognized, is honored, is respected. When we're in that place of knowing that's the purpose for crossing the bridge. That's the purpose for being the bridge. The purpose for crossing the bridge is for the recognition that we are all one, for the recognition that we all deserve equality, that we all deserve humanity, that we all deserve it all. Simply by our birthright, we deserve it all. We don't have to earn it. We don't have to earn it. But when we're in that place of purpose, our purpose is informed by our vision. When we have this vision of oneness, and our purpose of making this change is informed by that vision. And so then our purpose pulls us. Pain pushes, purpose pulls. Our purpose pulls us. And that's what's happening now. The people who are protesting now, they have a purpose. And that purpose is what is pulling. But that purpose is because of that vision. That vision that's been held for so many years. That vision that's been held for centuries. For centuries there's been the vision of oneness. There's been the vision of justice. There's been the vision of equality. There's been the vision of God being seen everywhere in everyone. And they may not have termed it that way, but that's exactly what they meant. God being seen everywhere in everyone. That's the vision, and that has been the vision. And so now the vision has informed the purpose, and the purpose is to make the change to that. And that's what's pulling now. Purpose is pulling. Despite COVID, despite all the other stuff that's going on, despite the risks, despite everything that's going on, purpose is pulling. Purpose is pulling. The purpose to live at one in God. At one in God. At one in God. And it all starts in consciousness. It all starts with our consciousness. That strengthening of the bridge that I was talking about has to be our spiritual practice. It has to be our anchoring in, practicing the presence of God, our anchoring in the truth that we know. It has to be standing resolute in the truth that we know, resolute in the knowledge and the awareness that God is all there is, that God is all there is. That there's but one life, there's but one power, there's but one presence. There's but one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. There's but one life. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. And that's what we have to say and know over and over and over again to ourselves and when we're looking at others and when we're dealing with others and when we see things ratchet up over these next few weeks coming up. You know, we have not reached the promised land yet. We're not there yet. We are just about to cross the bridge to start on that trek to the promised land. We've been talking about it for a long time. But do you know, I just have to mention this, that march from Selma to Montgomery happened in 1965, and the Voting Rights Act resulted from that. Do you know that voting rights are now being rolled back? Voting rights are now being rolled back. Voter suppression is now happening more than it happened in many, many years. That's because people went back to sleep. They thought we'd already accomplished this. They thought we'd already done that. They thought black people could already vote. So now we can go on about our business. No, that's not the way that works. That's not the way that works at all. The way it works is we have to stay awake, we have to stay aware, and we have to stand in the truth that we know each and every moment of each and every day. And be willing to allow each and every person the right to do the same, to stand in the truth, to stand in who they are, and to honor and respect each other. That's what we have to do. That's how we have to be. That's the bridge we have to be. We have to be committed to that. We have to be 100% committed to that. Have you ever noticed how committed to hate people who hate are? They work day and night at practicing hate. Do you know that we who love don't seem to work as hard? We just think it happens automatically because we feel it. We don't seem to be as committed to it. We seem to sometimes we'll turn a blind eye to things. Sometimes we will turn a deaf ear to things that are going on around us. Sometimes we'll act like we don't know what's happening. We'll feign ignorance because it's not happening to me. And so I'm saying to you, be as committed to love. Be 100% committed to love. Be 100% committed to healing. This is where healing happens. Be 100% committed to healing. Be 100% committed to up-leveling our consciousness. Because the collective consciousness has already shifted, as I said before. The collective consciousness has already shifted. We don't see as many stories of them right now, but we begin to see little things that are happening, little changes. You see the police officers kneeling with the protesters. You see police officers dancing with the protesters. I saw that last night. They were doing the electric slide in Atlanta. So this morning I saw a story of a woman in Palm Beach, Florida, she's 80 years old. She was the only one who was out protesting. And a policeman stopped her and cited her for not staying hydrated enough, and he gave her a bottle of water. Is that wonderful? It's little stories like that. It's little things like that. That's where change happens. She was willing to be that bridge. She was out there by herself, but she was willing to be that bridge. And that policeman was there, and he was willing to be that bridge also. That's how change happens. It happens in little pockets. It begins with me. It begins with each one of us. That's how peace happens. It begins with each one of us. That's how love happens. It begins with each one of us. Love is already here. Peace is already here. Harmony is already here. All we have to do is open up and allow it to be revealed in and through and as our very lives. Let's take a breath. Let's cross that bridge. And we can cross that bridge because we can be that bridge. And as we cross that bridge, we receive the gift that change is for all of us. For all of us. Because it's not a gift unless it's a gift for all of us. For all of us. And so let's just turn within in this moment. Just turn within in this moment. Taking a deep breath and recognizing one power, one presence, one mind, one life, one peace, one love, one joy, one being, one activity, one bridge. And that's God. God. Divine intelligence, source, by whatever name. It is source. It is that within which I live and move and have my being as it lives and moves and has its being in me. It is my very life. It is the life of each of us. It is that which inspires us, which animates us, which breathes us. There's no separation. There can be no separation. God, my life, and the life of each of us, God. One. And so it is from this place of oneness that I speak the word for us this day. I speak a word of healing. I speak a word of healing in our consciousness, healing of the collective consciousness. Healing in our sense of separation from God, first of all, and from each other. Healing. Healing is happening everywhere. I speak a special word of healing for anyone who needs healing in their body temples today. Knowing that every organ, cell, tissue, function, system of their bodies is responding to that radiant healing presence of God. I speak a word for anyone who's lost a loved one this day. just knowing that God is in the midst of that broken heart. God is in the midst of the grief. God is in the midst of loss. I speak a word of blessing for anyone and for healing for anyone who's lost a job or who's experiencing lack or financial lack of any kind. I know that abundance is their birthright. Prosperity is their birthright. God is in the midst, and all needs are being met in each and every moment. For God is the thing itself, and God shows up in and through our lives as whatever it is we need in any given moment. I speak a word of blessing for anyone. Speak a word of healing and a word of blessing for anyone needing healing this day in any area, knowing that God is right where they are right now, blessing, keeping, loving, lifting, comforting, guiding, directing, balancing, caring. God is. Healing is happening everywhere, even when it doesn't look like healing is happening everywhere. And I just simply say, thank you, God. I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently or loud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names are spoken here this day, I know that God is in the midst of everything, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And so I just give great, great thanks as the prayer goes out to protesters and the politicians and the police force, governments, citizens, everyone. God is in the midst of every situation and circumstance. And I simply say, thank you, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just allow it to be. And so it is.